Hi guys, my name is Chloe, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I read in July. Now, if you do tune in for all of my wrap-ups, you will have noticed that I have missed a wrap-up for June. June was quite a quiet reading month for me and I actually slumped quite a bit in terms of my reading, so my initial plan was to combine those books in with the July wrap-up and just have a joint one. But looking back, actually there were books that I didn't really enjoy, and I managed to read quite a lot of books in July which I didn't expect as well, so I've decided to just skip past those for the most part. I only enjoyed two of the books that I read out of the four. One of them was a DNF and one of them was a 2-star, so I'm just gonna let those slide. I will say though, my highlight for that month was probably The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea, so I'd recommend checking that one out if you haven't already. So anyway, moving on to July's books, I actually managed to read 7 books, which is the most I've read in quite a while, and my page count when I was looking at my stats was actually quite high as well. It was like 2nd or 3rd out of the whole year, which is absolutely great. I'm so glad I'm back on track with my reading, and I'm just wanted to pick up lots and lots of books, which is amazing. So yeah, let's get started. The first book that I finished in July, quite early actually because I did start it in June, was This Vicious Grace by Emily Thiede. This is a book that I received from Fairy Loot and I really enjoyed this one. This one just got a 5-star. It was absolutely amazing, and yeah, I just had a great time reading this book. So in this book you follow Alessa, and she is the Fenestra, and it's her job to save her island from a horde of demons which will come and attack her island. But she keeps killing her Fontes, who are her magical partners, who give her these extra powers that she needs in order to take down this horde. But her touch is poisonous to them, and she has just killed everyone that she's been partnered with so far, so she really needs to get that sorted out. Because she has killed so many of her Fontes, her people are starting to lose faith in her, and she's even beginning to receive assassination attempts, so she decides to hire a guard herself instead of one from her army because they can't be trusted. And this is where she meets Dante and she hires him as her personal guard, and the story just takes off from there really. It was just a really great book. One thing that I really enjoyed about this one was the setting. It was an island set in the summer, or at least somewhere that's really hot. The island had loads of lemon trees, so it was a perfect fantasy romance to pick up at the start of summer, and it was just so magical. I also really enjoyed Alessa's narration of this book. She was really quite sassy in places, and at the start very blasé about how many funerals she's had to attend because it's her, and it was just quite humorous. But it was also interesting to see her explore some of her deeper emotions as well at times. But yeah, I really liked that sassy side to her. It was really fun to read. And yeah, I really enjoyed the world building as well. Bit of the lore on the gods and why this system has been set up the way it is, and why the Fenestra has to find a Fonte and fight. That was all really interesting as well, and usually it just goes over my head, but I found I was actually really invested for once, which was really good. And I also liked the amount of LGBTQ+ rep in this book. Not only did you have guys applying to be her Fonte, but there were women as well, and that was really interesting. And a few of the characters in this book are queer as well, which is always good to see. And yeah, I just had the best time reading this book. I've said that already, and it helped that I really adored the romance as well between Alessa and Dante. It really reminded me of the relationship that Hawk and Poppy have and the amount of banter they have between them, and it was kind of slow burny as well, so that was really great to see. So yeah, I gave this one 5 stars and I am looking forward to picking up the sequel. So the next book wasn't as enjoyable, unfortunately, and it's the only book this month that got below 4 stars, and this is One of Us is Lying by Kalynn M. McManus. I gave this one 2.5 stars and I feel like that's quite generous. It rated kind of higher because I was intrigued. I did want to find out how this played out, but yeah, I didn't have the best time reading this book. I decided to pick it up because I had read This Lie Will Kill You a few months ago, and that one was recommended for fans of this book. So when I saw this one at a charity shop, I picked it up to give it a go, and unfortunately it didn't hit the mark. I would definitely recommend the other one instead. So, and this book is a YA thriller / mystery, and we are following 5 students as they attend detention, and during detention one of them dies, and he is Simon, and he runs this blog or vlog or something at the school where he shares everyone's secrets. It's a gossip blog, and he likes outing people and causing drama. And yeah, so coming out of detention, the 4 remaining teens are murder suspects, but they know that they didn't do it, so they're also really intrigued to find out who did it and kind of beat the police to that in a way. And yeah, I was intrigued enough. I did want to find out the outcome of who killed Simon, and I will say I was disappointed in that reveal. I don't feel like that was done as well as it could have been, so I didn't like that. And also most of the characters just irritated me. I know this is a teen book, but they just really grated on me. And I know it is a YA contemporary, it's going to happen. But yeah, I have read books before where that hasn't been the case, so yeah, that really irritated me as well. I will say I did really like the premise and the initial setup. I was especially intrigued towards the beginning, and I loved how the story was set up. I was super keen to get going with the reading. Unfortunately, it didn't play out as it was. And the other thing that I didn't like about this book was the romances in this book. I think it was 1. It's been a while. This book is also so forgettable as well for me, so that doesn't help. But yeah, I didn't find the romance between 2 of the characters very believable. I found that they had no chemistry. I just couldn't wait for this book to be over. So if you're looking for a YA thriller to read that isn't this one, maybe try This Lie Will Kill You, because that one was just, whilst it was still full of drama and kind of irritating in places, it was really well written, and the imagery in there was absolutely gorgeous. The next book I finished in July finished out a series for me, and this is an Immortality, a love story by Dana Schwartz. And this was the final book in the duology. I had a really good time reading this book, and I'm glad, especially since I love the first one so much. So in this book we are following Hazel again as she continues her surgery until she is hired by the King of England, King George III, to come to London and be his daughter's private physician. So she goes down to London down there, and the story just sets off from there. I can't say too much more because it is a sequel, and any other plot points kind of follow on from the first book. But yeah, I had a really great time reading this book. I loved the historical setting, and it was lovely to see George in London instead of Scotland like we saw in the first book. I also loved the spin on history that this book had, so it does follow some of the events involving George III and his disease and things like that, and I loved the fantasy spin on why that happened in this book. That was really interesting. I also really enjoyed meeting the new characters in this book, so Princess Charlotte and Dr. Ferris as well. Those were really interesting. I will say I wish this book was longer so that Hazel had more time to spend with these new characters before the book concluded. That would have been really great. And yeah, I did find that the atmosphere in this book overall was slightly, not bad, but not as great as in book 1 when we were in Scotland and there was that element of grave digging and the sort of nitty-gritty side of medicine and stuff. That was really interesting, and that was lacking a bit in this book, but overall it was a really great read. A series completed, and I gave it 4.5 stars. The next book I finished in July was a manga, and this was the Piece Omnibus Volume 2, which had volumes 4, 5 and 6 in it. I did read the first bind-up last month, and I just had the best time reading this one. I gave that one 4 stars, and I also gave this one 4 stars, although I did enjoy the first bind-up that slightly bit more. But yeah, in this one we are basically following Luffy, who has set out to become king of the pirates, and he's going to do this by finding the One Piece, which is a really rare treasure. And to do this he starts to hire people to become part of his crew and go on his adventures. So yeah, we're just continuing that story from the first volume and in this one, so I can't say too much, but I'm just having the best time reading this series. This is one of the first mangas that I've read. I only read the Infernal Devices manga before, which wasn't originally a manga, so technically this is the first manga I've ever read, and I'm just having the best time. It's full of pirates and adventure, it's wacky, it's quirky, I love the characters. It's so good. I'm just not getting those 5-star feels yet. And I will say for this one, it did sort of slump for me in the middle. There are bits that I fly through really quickly and other bits it takes me a bit longer to read. But yeah, overall, I'm just having a great time. The characters are probably the strongest part of this book, especially Zoro and Sanji. They're my favourite characters so far, although Nami is really great as well. And I just love all of their interactions and I can't wait to see where their adventures go. So yeah, I had a great time reading this instalment. I gave it 4 stars and I will be picking the next one up soon, hopefully. The next book I finished was a reread for me, and this was The Extraordinaries by TJ Klune. This is the first TJ Klune book that I did reread, and I'm so glad I did because I had a great time reading this book again. I think the first time I read it I gave it 4 stars, and this time it got a 4.5, so I enjoyed it that little bit more. I think it was because I knew how things ended, so it was really fun to see how the book played out before the big reveals, so that was, yeah, really fun. But for those who don't know, in this book we follow Nick, and he is obsessed with superheroes, especially Shadow Star, who is his biggest crush, and we just follow him day to day as he attends school and hangs out with his friends. But he's also the author of the biggest Extraordinaries fanfiction, and yeah, he's just so adorable and wholesome, and I just love reading about Nick and his friends. It's really great, and they did make me chuckle at times. And then one day he gets fed up of just being his normal self, attending school, writing fanfiction, and decides to set out become an extraordinary himself, and the story kicks off from there. Now this one is really wholesome and cute. The characters are incredible. I really love following Nick. This book has loads of LGBTQ+ rep, but also ADHD rep as well, because Nick has ADHD. I can't comment on how good that rep is because I don't have ADHD myself, but I feel like it was done well. Let me know if you have any thoughts about this. But yeah, I love following Nick and his friends. So we also have Gabby and Jazz, who are in a lesbian relationship, and we're also following Nick as he explores his many gay crushes. But yeah, as I said, this book was really funny. It had me chuckling at times, and it's just so wholesome whilst having those sad, sort of darker moments spliced throughout the book as well, which was really interesting. And yeah, it was full of superheroes. If you adore superheroes, and I'd say especially if you enjoyed Spider-Man Homecoming, this book kind of has those vibes. I would definitely pick this one up, and I'm so glad this time that I have the other books. I'm currently reading the sequel Flashfire, and I have the 3rd book in the trilogy as well, whereas the first time I had to read that cliffhanger and I didn't have anything to read, so I'm glad I do this time. So yeah, I gave this one 4.5 stars. It just didn't give me the 5-star feels. The next book I finished in July is probably one of the most hyped books at the moment, and that is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. I decided to pick this one up with an Audible credit, so I listened to it on audio, and I had the best time reading this book. It was absolutely amazing, and it definitely deserves all of the hype. 5-star. I had a great time. So in this book, if you don't know already, you follow Violet, and she wants to become a scribe, but her mum commands that she must become a dragon rider instead, and so she has to enter the college to become a dragon rider alongside hundreds of other people who want this as well. And yeah, the story just kicks off from there really. I really enjoyed the competition / game elements. It definitely reminded me of Divergent. I know that's been said before, but it did, and it was amazing. I really liked Violet as a character as well because she has a chronic illness. It made her more interesting to read about, and something that I haven't really seen too much in fantasy books especially, so I did really like that, and I really loved her dynamic with Xaden as well, and the bromance, which was great. Enemies to lovers, slow burn, absolutely loved it. And then the dragons as well. The dragons are the best part about this book, and I won't say too much because I think it will just spoil the surprise for you, but yeah, the dragons weren't disappointing at all. I loved them. I loved how sassy they were, how quirky they were, how deadly they could be, how vicious they were. Just everyone's dragons in this were amazing and made the book even more interesting to read. So yeah, I had the best time reading this book. It probably isn't a 5-star book, but I enjoyed it so much that I had to give it 5 stars anyway. And finally, the last book that I read in July was You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight by Kalynn Bayron. This one is a young adult horror and it was really, really good. I had a great time reading this one and it was really interesting to read since the last book I read from this author was a dystopian fantasy book, Cinderella is Dead. So yeah, this one was really, really good. I definitely picked it up for the cover art and the sprayed edges, but I wasn't disappointed. I had a good time reading this book. So in this book we follow Charity, and she is a final girl at Camp Mirror Lake, and her and her colleagues like act out these different scenarios in order to scare the guests as they pay to come and just get spooked out, basically. It's the last week of the season that they're running for the year, and her colleagues start dipping out. Some of them aren't turning up, and then things happen that aren't quite planned, and yeah, the story just goes from there. It's very, very creepy, and it's also very gory. It was surprisingly gory for a YA book. But yeah, it was really, really creepy. The atmosphere of the camp at night was really, really great. Almost reminded me of the video game The Quarry. If anyone's played that, it kind of has those similar vibes sprinkled throughout. And yeah, I love the cast of characters in this. This is another book with great LGBTQ+ rep, but also BIPOC rep. Really, really great. And it was also very weird. And I did like that it was weird, but I didn't like why it was weird. That doesn't make any sense. But basically, this book ended up being kind of weird. I can't say why because it would be spoilers, but I almost wished it went more down the slasher-esque route and not the different stranger ending that we got. But overall it was a really good read, a really fast read as well. I think it was just over 200 pages, so I flew through this one. Really, really great. I hope the author writes more horror in the future, and I gave this one 4.5 stars. So that was it. Those were all of the books that I managed to read in July. Let me know down below if you've read any of these and what did you think. I would love to know your thoughts. But as always, I hope that you're enjoying your current reads, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!